Well, hello, everyone.
Welcome to What About This Idea?
What about this idea?
What about this idea?
Yeah.
Every time we say it like
We're
that.
so good at
We should make a song. Remember when we first started and we wanted to make a jingle and I put it into AI?
Yeah.
Oh boy.
It was really, really,
I really wish I could
so-
dig that up again because it was really fun.
It was so
was
beyond
good.
awful that it almost came
It
out
almost
back
would have
to
been good. Yeah, if we put it
That's
maybe
awesome.
to a
Mostly
dance
it was
beat.
awful.
We could have put it to a dance beat, or something. No. Anyway, so now we just started off with welcome to the show.
That's great.
I feel like we should introduce the show during the second half most of the time. Because we're always we're coming in here, it's been a day maybe.
Yeah.
There's things happening. We sit down and we're supposed to be like, woohoo, welcome everybody to What About This Idea? And we don't necessarily feel that way.
Yeah.
Not that we're not excited,
Yeah.
but maybe not that way at the beginning of the show, but by midway through the show, we're like,
Yeah.
what about this idea?
Yeah, it's true. We get our energy builds.
Yes.
Well, good. Well,
Yeah.
hopefully I can help.
You're
build.
going to do great with
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So who do we have with us?
Who do we have with us?
Oh my gosh. So me.
Well, we can introduce you. So Katie Jacobs. I know your name.
So me. I am Katie. I'm Katie Jacobs, and
Okay, so Katie Jacobs
Yes.
from Minnesota.
yes, from Minnesota.
I told you first of all, I knew a lot of Katies.
Yes.
You are not related to all other Katies. I get that.
I
I've
mean,
learned this over the years.
A lot of Katies aren't related to a lot of Katies. But yeah, I can totally understand.
Mostly, they're not
Emotionally, we
related.
are because we're from the same
Especially
era.
with a name like Katie Jacobs coming from the Midwest.
It just feels like
It's very
like
Midwest.
I know you or your family or
Right.
someone you know.
Right,
I'm
probably
like, How
true.
could I not know Katie
It is
Jacobs?
true. It is Minnesota. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. No, I grew up in Minnesota.
Where'd you grow up?
I grew up in St. Paul,
Okay.
and my
then I
mom
for
and
sure
dad
don't
are
know you.
both. Where are you from?
Well, I grew up on this side of the river.
Okay, of course.
There's that side of the river, and no one knows anymore.
Yeah,
Not that you're
exactly.
on two
well,
sides of the river.
I know, and St. Paul is. I know those Minneapolis people.
I grew up in Elk River, actually.
Oh,
but,
okay,
but that's
really
like,
far away. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
It's super far.
I grew up in St. Paul, and I think from my I grew up. I have a mom and a dad, and right now I have 3 little boys, and we live on the east side still, in Mendota Heights. And I think a little bit about me. I grew up with.
This is the easiest interview ever. She's just gonna, I love it. She's just going to keep going.
We say,
And you're doing
"What do
everything
we
you're
have
supposed
here
to
today?"
do. I love it.
And then they
sure.
say Katie Jacobs, and then there's a silence, and
Yeah.
then Sam says,
Maybe if
"Where'd
we
you grow
don't-
up, Katie
Yeah, exactly.
Jacobs?"
Exactly.
If we don't ask anything, maybe they'll
Yeah.
just keep doing it. It's not true. Not
No?
everybody does
really?
this.
Okay,
I
well,
love it. Yeah.
well, please keep guiding me though, like give
No,
me a
I
signal
like
or
it.
something.
This is great.
No, but maybe I can give you a little backdrop of me, and then
Of course.
I love the name of your podcast, and I love ideas, and so I absolutely want to share a
It's
little
the
bit.
best.
It
It's
is,
a great
yeah.
name. It's a great name.
Exactly, it is a great name, and it's an easy topic if you like ideas.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and ideas are fun. And
Right.
everyone's got them.
Right.
They're not always good.
Everybody has them. Not many people can execute them, but
Yeah.
no,
We've
but
never really talked about that. Like, where do you think most ideas are had? Because I think that's the shower for sure. Don't you
Yeah.
think
What's that?
that most ideas are had in the shower? Where are they most
That's like
communicated?
the number one spot?
Everyone
Yeah.
says that. They say that. I was thinking about that in the shower.
For me, it's not the shower. It's like when I can have a clear moment
it's
where I can
walking.
just be. That's when I get my ideas.
So walking.
driving.
Okay,
Yeah.
walking.
Where,
Yeah.
Whenever I'm sitting and I'm like just looking out at the world,
Yeah.
not thinking too much
Okay,
about
so
that.
that makes sense. So it's the shower,
Shower is
represents
also
something
that,
like
though.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then, where do you think most ideas are communicated?
At the bar.
At the bar.
I guess.
Right. When you have no inhibition, you're just like, hey, I think about this idea, and no one. Yeah, it doesn't matter. Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your friend's like, well, let's hear it then.
That's
Let's
when you
hear
get,
it.
that's when you have a little bit of liquid bravery,
Courage, yeah.
right? And you're like, okay, I have this idea.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to
Right.
tell you about
Right.
it.
And
I
then-
want to know what you think.
Exactly.
And then there are times when you do it where you're like you're anticipating that they're going to be like, that's the best idea ever. Or you hear
Yeah.
yourself say it out loud and you're like, oh
Ooh,
shit, that's
yeah,
actually
that's
a bad
not so
idea.
good.
Never mind. I don't really want your opinion on that one. I can see it myself now.
I think there's like spectrums though. Like people are like, hey, wouldn't it be great if, like, that's a cute way of saying you have an idea. To what you just mentioned of like, I have this idea and you've actually legitimately thought about it.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of energy going into how the other person you're sharing with is going to react.
There's some pressure behind that, isn't there?
And there's this like ebb and flow of like, and I've met so many people like, don't share your ideas to share
ideas.
them. Exactly. And I'm
That's
in
my
the camp of just, I don't know. I think for me, it's just more about the idea is only as good as your ability to have confidence to share it.
Yeah.
And then the confidence to receive the feedback from people you don't know.
Right.
Well, also, the
right?
idea is pretty much the easiest part.
Totally.
I know. They live and die. They're like,
can live and die, no
seedlings.
problem.
It's super cool. Like when you throw all the little seeds when you're
Yeah.
when you're a kid and you have a little tray with 180 little squares in it and you plant in the little seeds and then they all come up and you're like, I'm gonna have so many things.
Totally.
And then like the next day you go and half of them are dead.
Right.
Like, what am I doing wrong?
Exactly. I know. My son is actually growing something right now, and he has that same reaction to what he's growing. So it's
like,
fun though.
Yeah.
But I think that's why they start small and they get these ideas and they have this energy. And then as we get older, we're all like, oh man, this is really crap because someone's going to tell me it doesn't work. And we know too much. We have too many experiences that cloud us. And
I haven't been broken enough yet.
Yeah.
Like I need to be broken more.
That's a great quality. You have good people
God,
around
is
you.
it?
I don't know. I mean, depends. It's really hard.
Time will tell.
Totally.
That's right.
Totally.
That's a challenge maybe to the universe. Go ahead and break me some more.
Is that all you got?
Right. Right. Well, it depends on your environment. It can happen in different phases, right? No, but I mean, I think, so I grew up in, with a mom and a dad.
I like that you say that.
Yeah.
Because doesn't it lend itself to like some sort of a response?
Is it that she's saying she didn't have siblings, or that
Nope,
she had two live parents, or
or are we like? Is
there another way?
I know that you don't mean it in any way, good nor bad. You're just saying, kind of good.
Well, there is a story
good.
with it. I mean, it actually leads to the idea. And so my dad had MS growing up. So so the story attached to a lot of the idea what I'm talking to today is about having a mom and a dad growing up. Because my dad had MS, and
so
he was diagnosed when I was 3, right? And so it is a big part of my
family's medical.
Okay.
And I just want to clarify exactly MS.
Yeah.
This is multiple sclerosis, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because there are other things that are MS, but MS, when people say that, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah, multiple sclerosis. So it's a disease, neuromuscular disease that affects different aspects of humans, right? And so for my dad, it impacted his left side of his body.
Okay.
And I remember being 3 years old, and my dad grew up being like a triathlete, and he was incredibly active. And I remember in Minnesota, we had an ice skating rink that we had in front of our yard, and my dad was really struggling with ice skating. And I specifically remember my mom saying to him, Tom, what is going on? Like, why do you need to use a stool to ice skate? And we all remember different things from our childhood, but for me, that like sparked my antenna to go up about like, oh, something's going on, right? Even at the age of 3. Well,
was this like when he was first realizing he had it or something?
Yes, absolutely. It was right away. My dad was in Vietnam, and so we've since learned that he was exposed to Agent Orange.
Yeah, right.
And so it took a while to get to that, but that was what essentially we've discovered.
They were doing all sorts of nasty crap.
Exactly. It was wild, right?
Exposing people
and so for me, I just always grew up like, understanding like, that people can treat people differently, not by just the color of their skin, but truly just like how, maybe they walk or, right? And so my antenna was really up, and my mom had a very strong philosophy of just life is about experiences. If we can't afford to travel, let's bring experiences to our home. And so by the time I was 18, we hosted a ton of exchange students from all over the world.
Oh, cool.
Okay. And I remember our French exchange student just in kindergarten to we had many exchange students from Japan. And I loved it because I got to understand they would cook for us, right? And, we'd share our culture with them, and it was just really special, right? It's so much so it like sparked a lot of my curiosity of what I studied in high school. And so I studied Japanese in high school, and I got the opportunity to go to Minneapolis' sister city, Ibaraki, with the Minneapolis mayor for a couple weeks. And so
Which mayor at the time?
Sharon Sales Belton.
Oh, I don't know. I don't.
Yeah,
remember
she was
that.
pretty. It was a pretty special trip, and it was like a high school, like I don't know, like maybe 10 of us from high school, and then the Minneapolis government of
Cool.
sorts.
Yeah.
Visiting Ibaraki, which is their sister city.
Yeah.
And so that I studied it in high school, studied it in college, and then worked overseas. And it was just, for me, that experience really shaped me.
Yeah,
It
clearly.
shaped me growing up, just understanding difference, but also shaped me in understanding, like, as you're traveling, just how little you are in this big world,
Yeah.
right? And just understanding how much that, I remember having a moment when I was in Japan, and I was at a host family, and I was studying abroad, and I remember waking up one day, and Japanese homes, they typically don't have central heating, at least the one that I was in, and they have like a central heating in their main room. It's called a kotatsu, where they sit at, and it gets heated. But at night, you sleep under futons, and it's really cold because it's outside. And I woke up, and it was just so cold in the room, and I just remember being like, what the heck did I do?
Right.
Like,
right.
I know no one. I don't speak the language that well. I did, but I didn't, right?
Yeah.
And then I like started bawling, like just
Like a little panic attack.
100%. And
Yeah.
I just remember I was like the ugly cried, like couldn't catch my breath, right?
Yeah.
And then I realized, like, I have to figure this out. Like, I'm in this country that I don't know and doesn't know me. I don't speak the language. The food's different. The housing's different. Like, and I had to figure it out.
How old?
I was like 19 or 20.
Okay.
Right? Yeah. And
You're still a kid. Really,
yeah,
at that
absolutely. I mean,
age,
I think
yeah.
as we have 3 little boys, like I think about them going away to college, and I'm just like, oh my gosh.
How old are these little boys?
They're 11, 9, and 6.
Okay.
So
on the verge of
yes.
not being little boys.
No,
Don't
but I
call me
had
a little boy anymore, Mom.
exactly. I had a conversation with Oliver last night, who's my oldest. I just said to him, I said, do you realize that in about 8 years, 7 years, you're going to college? You're gonna, just like there's like the perspective of just like he's. Right? I mean, I think
It
it's one
takes
of those.
forever to get that far, though, when you're that age. Like, getting from 11 to college is
Totally.
like...
From his perspective. For mine, I'm like, oh my
Tomorrow.
gosh, it's over halfway, right?
Yeah.
But I think, that experience really, really shaped me, and it helped me, understand just, this huge world that's out there, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up, after college...
But you made it through the night?
Oh yeah, no,
And you
I made it.
woke up?
I did it all, and I just figured through it, and
Yeah.
just kind of. But it was an experience. I'm sure we all have experiences that just like we have that kind of rocked our world.
Yeah, that's
it was a very
like homesickness,
privileged
too.
rock your world experience, but
Yeah.
it was an experience that I was like, I know literally no one here.
Yeah.
And it really shaped a lot of what I'm doing, and just in understanding like curiosity and whatnot. And so fast forward after college, I was like, I don't want to get a job right away. So I taught English over in Japan, and then my dad got really sick. My dad had, neuromuscular diseases. It really impacts you if you have an accident, right? And so he had a really bad accident. And
Like a car accident?
it was a really bad accident.
Okay.
He had fallen in a situation that he shouldn't have fallen in.
Okay.
And it was
We have talked about similarities.
yes, and it was really scary. And
Yeah.
the fact he was still alive from that accident was great.
Okay, so he was, yeah, I mean, he was, something happened that was
Yeah.
very traumatic for him
Yeah.
that shouldn't have happened. It wasn't
Right.
related to the illness or something
No,
at the time.
it was. I mean, I can just. The long story short, for long distances he used a scooter, and he was at work, and he backed up into the elevator, and the elevator wasn't there, and so he fell 22 feet in an elevator shaft.
What the H?
It was a warehouse, right?
Yeah.
And so it really sparked so much. And so when I got home from that, I was like, my mom, who's an elementary school teacher, I have 2 sisters. One was still in school, and one was in New York. I got to take care of my dad.
Yeah.
And so, what that meant was he wasn't at home, he was in the hospital, right? Or in care. And so I learned very quickly about navigating care and understanding just how important it is for a family to become an anchor. And
An advocate.
exactly. And understanding how to, you're human that you're advocating for best. And
Right.
and so I did that for unknowingly about 1.5 years. And I learned very quickly I didn't actually ever want to go into healthcare, which is kind of funny, because I'm kind of in it a little bit right now, but I didn't want to do that type of modeling. But simultaneously, it was like my first foray into building a new business. And so I was literally going to the hospital and coming home, and I was like, I'm 22 years old, 23 years old. I need to figure out what to do with my, like, what can I do? And I ended up, my mom sewed, so she had a sewing machine, and I was not that skilled, but I could do it. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to create a belt business. And have I told you this before? No.
Yes.
Okay. And I created.
This is her foray into entrepreneurship.
Exactly. No. And so I created this business where, I mean, don't zoom in on my waistline, but it was when I actually used to like to wear belts, right?
Okay.
And I got out the sewing machine and I created these belts, and I had gone to school out in Pennsylvania. And so people used to be like, oh, you betcha, like, oh, you're so funny.
Oh, because you're from Minnesota.
Totally,
Yeah,
right. And so the name of my company was You Beltcha.
I get it. I almost knew it before you said it.
I get it. I see where she's going.
Oh, I think I know it.
So I was like, I'm 22, and the logo, I wish I could find this because I drew the state of Minnesota and then where Minnesota's skinny in the middle.
Yeah, there's a belt.
Put a belt.
Oh, I love it.
Right?
Why is this so funny? I love this.
Thank you.
It's very cute. It's very kitschy. Very upper Midwest.
It was so fun, and then I was like, it was like You Beltcha, designed by KT, and then I started sewing belts, and sure enough, I started like selling them, like just word of mouth, like the government of Minnesota, the state government. I wasn't formal as a LLC yet.
Right.
Wait a minute. I just started selling a word of mouth government of Minnesota. What do you made some leap.
So I wasn't registered. I literally was like, I'm 22 years old. I'm just going to create a logo.
Oh, my dad's
I didn't register.
Too. I need money.
Yeah. Sure. I mean, I don't know if I was going to make that was more of a hobby. Let's be honest, Sam. But I think it was really fun. And I remember going out to New York City visiting my sister. She lived in Hoboken, and I brought a backpack worth of belts, and I opened up shop.
Yeah.
And people bought them, and I was jokingly saying like, the return policy is like, I'm so sorry about the quality, but just whatever. So that was fun. I made some dog collars and stuff like that, and then I always say that J. Crew caught on.
Oh.
And they disrupted my business, and I couldn't keep up.
They stole your idea.
Totally.
They
stole it.
They stole it. Go ahead.
And so
and then here's an example.
Exactly. And so my belt company then turned into it turned into a rental property for me. And so it's because I loved the name so much. I didn't want to give up the name. Right. And so every month that my renter would make a check out to You Beltcha. And so I had a property for, 15 years. And that was my first foray into like
being an entrepreneur.
Yes, but I never called it that. Like, right?
Well,
I was just
you would
It's
because
such
that
a
would
fancy
be scary.
word. We've dealt with it all the time.
Totally. It's just I'm sure.
It's just a little too Frenchy and fancy to be comfortable for most people.
Exactly.
Frenchy.
It's like exactly. No, I think
whoa. Yeah. Multilingual.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I know. Mm-hmm. Keep me here. I'll have a few more languages.
We'll get her a glass of wine
Exactly.
and then see if she can speak any Japanese still.
That comes out of the sake bar.
Can you still say I'm cold as shit? I'm freezing to death in here.
I don't know the shit part, but I can definitely say cold. But no, but it was really fun, and I think my dad ended up getting better, and so he got to the point where my mom was like, we figured out a plan for my mom to continue working, and then I ended up getting a job, and I never thought I'd stay in Minnesota. I always thought that I wanted to go back and teach English in Korea, and it was the right decision though for me to stay here. And so in order for me to stay here, I wanted a big company. And
wanted to own your own big company?
I needed a global, I didn't even think of starting a business at that point. It was more about just like I needed a company that had opportunities for
security
growth.
Or for opportunities
travel.
for growth?
Yeah, travel. So I picked a company out of Atlanta, big shipping company, huge shipping company, UPS. And
they're kind of like one of the biggest.
Yeah, they're kind of like one of the biggest. And I started there, and it was so much fun, and it was kind of run like the industry that it is. And so I'm sure you see this when you're recruiting for what you're doing. It's just the industry of logistics, like in supply chain, is the culture actually mirrors it, right? So it's either on time or it's not. There is literally no gray.
Right.
right?
It's either there or it isn't.
The corporate culture was in the early 2000s when I was working there was exactly the same. We had 4 colors of suits we could wear: brown, black, blue, and gray. You know, it was very much sales driven based on, did you perform? What did you do for me today? And then if you did, you keep going. And so in my time there, like, they didn't care about my age, they cared about what I did. And so they would promote me, right?
Okay.
And it was a lot of fun. And I got a ton of training about, like, how to sell, how to do a pre-call, how to do a post-call, like the power of a goal. And their culture was such, we would go to Kansas City, which is where their Midwest hub was, I think, because actually it was Louisville, Kentucky. And we would do weekend trainings. And they'd literally say, you stay here for the week, and then you stay on the weekend. We do training on Saturday, we volunteer on Sunday. And it was just, I didn't know any better.
Right.
Right? I didn't know any better. And
when you say I didn't know any better, if you had known better, what would you think differently?
Well, I did, because I left. Because it was like, sometimes we get in environments.
Your life.
Was it? Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah.
When you say I don't know any better, I just don't know exactly what that means.
I didn't know that companies. There aren't a lot of companies that say go away on a weekend and you're required. You can't go home.
Right.
You have to stay.
And it was just like a part of the gig, and everyone did it.
Yeah, you had to do it, because I was part of their training program. And so I think I just didn't know any better, because it was my first experience. It was my first experience to corporate America and understanding, and I wasn't hating it. I mean,
so overall positive, but at the same time, it was taking over your life.
It was, and I remember being just kind of like, they don't really know who I am. And I remember having this moment
that's really not good for companies.
No, it was not. And I remember having this moment of, like, I can stay here and I can keep moving, but they have literally no clue who I am.
Right.
And part of my area that I was calling on was Bloomington, and I ended up passing this huge organization that had people playing volleyball outside one day.
You almost had me wishing. You almost had me wishing that I was
like, volleyball? That's awesome.
like, that looks like fun.
Totally.
Yeah, you almost had me wishing that I had, like, for a minute there when you were talking about UPS, it sounded like you were really enjoying it. Like, it was good.
I was.
And you
I
learned
had
a bunch,
so much
though.
energy. I mean, there's no way now that we have 3 little boys, I can even imagine doing something like that.
Right.
Because I was responsible for going for sales meetings at 7 a.m. on a Friday. I mean, literally in the hub of where the drivers come in, the package cars do it. It was a philosophy of all hands on deck during holidays. So holidays were renowned. You don't spend it with your family, because you are literally helping to, in the case that there's late air from an airplane.
Wasn't this sort of addressed in Tom Hanks' movies?
I was going to say, that's what I was going to say. That was FedEx, right?
Was it FedEx?
I think it was FedEx.
It was
yeah.
FedEx.
Oh, it was FedEx. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, but it was just, I think when you're 22, you only know so much, right? And I just didn't know what I didn't know. And I was learning as I was going. And
I mean, I find it interesting, because I did not do corporate world.
Yeah.
And that would have, at first,
Yeah.
you sounded so excited about it.
Because I was.
Yeah.
Genuinely. Like, I remember getting my first paycheck, and I was living home with my parents, and I was like, what the hell do I do with all this money? I mean, I don't know how much it was, but I think I was getting like $50,000 a year, right? But I was like, what do I do? And I was like, I bought a pair of rollerblades.
Yeah. Invented by a Minnesotan.
Expensive one.
I still have them in the garage. I'm not joking. I don't know if I'd ever get on them, because God bless me, I'd probably fall over.
There's certain things.
I've seen some bad videos.
Totally.
Yeah, there's certain things you give up
That
over
was an
time.
ice skates. Like, what is going on?
I can ice skate, but rollerblading for some reason, I don't.
It hurts when you fall.
Yeah.
And, yeah, Juliet, it really hurts when you fall.
It really does, doesn't
Yeah, you
it?
just have to.
Yeah.
I used to joke about the tattoo I was going to get, of all of the things that, like, if I had one too many, I'd have to be like, well, that's right, no more trampolines.
Totally,
It says
totally.
right on.
Totally.
Like,
I mean,
all this
it's smart, right?
with a line through it.
Right.
No trampolines.
trampolines.
Okay,
you learn
fine.
through experiences, right?
Yeah.
And that was an experience that I realized after I saw these people playing volleyball, I was like, hey, I want to try that. That seems fun.
Yeah, so it was
And
another company that looked a lot more fun.
And I literally applied, and I was like, the hiring manager correlated like procurement with supply chain. God bless her.
Yeah.
And I originally applied for like a sales role there, and then they slot me for procurement. And then I jumped in and I was like in corporate America, and I loved it because I had the
Back
training.
in corporate America though, because UPS
Yeah.
is corporate America too,
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah. I was
okay.
still in, but it was a different type. I was in like the sales division of it, so I was out when I
Can
said
you name
corporate
that
America.
company too? Is that okay?
Oh yeah, Best Buy. Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's another big one.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think at UPS it was like I was in sales, so I was literally going to accounts. When I was in corporate America, I was literally button seat in an actual corporation.
In the corporation.
And I was navigating the politics and the political and cultural mapping of just like all the humans and all that stuff, right?
You're speaking her language.
Yeah,
right now.
yeah, right? Well, I mean, it is, but that's where I started, and then it was really fun because everything that I learned in this training program, translated itself into just solving problems in different, industry. And I learned very quickly that if you raise your hand and say, I want to do this in the organization, like it was Best Buy at the time when I was there, they would let me do it. And so I got to chameleon
nice.
it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I got to learn so much, and I'd never worked in retail. I mean, I worked very part-time at like Banana Republic, but I mean, never worked in retail.
That wasn't your life.
Yeah. No, and so I think it was just one of those things where I was having so much fun and meeting people and understanding just how you navigate.
God, you're back to making me wish I'd done something in the corporate world
Yeah.
at some point in my life.
Well, you still can, yes.
No,
Yeah.
they don't want me. I don't
Yeah.
think.
What would
I
you
got
do?
all this.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Look at this.
I know, it's a hard one. Yeah. It's so
have an
fun
empire.
I know, but it's so fun to meet people who have never done it. And
It
you
really
know,
does make me
Yeah.
feel not necessarily disadvantaged, but like the
Yeah.
ugly duckling or something, because everyone else is like. And then I spent 8 years in corporate,
Yeah.
and I learned this and that, and we do things this way. And I'm like, I don't know what language they're speaking. It's not.
Sometimes they
it's
don't
not
know.
native to me.
They don't, half the
Yeah.
time they don't know.
That's what I always
Yeah.
assumed.
And, that's how I learned. I never was really in that big corporate setting, but I always worked with those
Yeah.
big corporate settings. So
Yeah.
I was always on the fringe.
Oh, you were like.
I was always on
immersed
the.
in it.
I was with a consulting group, maybe
Yeah.
that would go in or something
Yeah.
like that,
Gotcha.
but not ever like
Yeah.
in there. And when I heard the rules and the systems that people were following, I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't be good at that because
Yeah.
See, that's what I always
It
think.
would
is
be
I
really
wouldn't
hard
fit
And I
in.
to
know
follow
I
the
wouldn't
rules.
be good at that now. I had a
Yeah.
call earlier this week. I said to my husband, I walked out, I go, I think I'd last about 10 minutes.
Yeah, right.
before I told
And he
someone
just
to
looked at me and
fuck
smiled
off.
and laughed.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's probably the problem.
Yeah.
Like at the age you're talking about, both
Yeah.
of us probably would have said "fuck off" to
Yeah, that's
someone
right.
right away. Like,
You might have to fire me
you
today,
just asked
but
me to work
fuck off.
weekends with no pay in another place and not go home.
Right.
Is that what you just asked of
Yeah,
me?
it's wild.
See you later.
It's wild. And I think I got in that environment where I was in this world of solving problems, connecting dots, and then at the end I got to help grow business.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
cool.
It was super cool.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I learned through those experiences just how much a strategist is only as good as its ability to understand the operation. So it goes back to the whole entrepreneurial world of anyone can come up with an idea, but it's about how do you execute. And so
it's
for
way
me,
different.
it's about when Best Buy was unfortunately not doing well in 2009. There was a recession going on. There were some things going on in leadership, and that CEO Hugh Bear, did something a lot of CEOs don't actually do, and he did an evaluation of all of his operations and understanding just what's giving me a return on investment, right? And he looked at our global operations and decided that there wasn't a lot of return on investment, but he learned from those global operations around how they operate. So it's one thing if you say you're not doing well and shut it down,
Right.
but if they're successful in their environment, what can you learn? And so it was pretty, for me, just to see how he navigated that. And he pulled a lot of the learnings to bring back to what is a lot of the operating model today in terms of helping Best Buy represent manufacturers and have the manufacturers and have space in the stores, right? And then have the manufacturers actually be responsible for their labor.
Yeah.
Right? And so it was really fun for me to understand just the macro environment.
Rather than Best Buy in Minnesota, Best Buy corporate trying to control all of that in all of those places.
Yeah, well, and it's really costly. So if you think about just labor is a really expensive aspect of running, and it also is the real estate. And so if you rent the real estate, if the OEM has to rent the real estate from the retailer, then that's not necessarily as much of a cost. And then the OEM has to provide their own labor, then it really reconfigures their whole operating model.
Plus, they know what they're doing, right? That's
Exactly.
their business.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
you know, to be able to trust them to do it in the way that serves Best Buy.
Absolutely, and it allows Best Buy to focus on different things. And so I got to see Hubert just do that, which was really special. And then he looked at our internal operations and just said, how are things running? What do we need to fix? And then he did what a lot of CEOs don't do, and he decided to invest in growth. Mm-hmm. And so that's when, you know, like a few of us who had a history of like solving problems, connecting dots, and growing businesses were plucked and were able to work
Did
in
you
a
get
growth.
plucked?
Yeah, I got it plucked. Not right away, but eventually.
Yeah, and that's a good thing.
It was really
not like
fun.
Not like
yes.
Yeah, you got plucked and put in a position.
Put in a position
Yeah.
and said, you get to go figure out the next idea.
Yeah.
And
cool.
It was super fun. And I had some
With a
really great
budget.
later, sorry?
With a budget.
With a ginormous budget. But now I look at it and I'm like, oh my gosh, just to get a prototype, it was like crazy what I was getting approved for.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I honestly look at that time where I was in it, where I was responsible for quarterbacking ideas, market sizing, you know, understanding like build, buy, borrow, and then bringing to life. And towards the end, it was like, get it done in 90 days. Okay. So I look at it like I was paid a really good salary to learn and fail. Right?
Yeah, which is cool.
Yes.
I think that's where
Yes.
where another thing about the whole corporate
Yeah.
world that maybe would have helped me, like
Yeah.
to learn a lot. Like
Yeah.
you didn't just learn what you learned in college and then that was it. You went and actually did a lot of stuff and learned.
Absolutely. And it's what the risk that I see, like I just had a couple of summer interns at our high school student. I just see the way the world's moving right now and just how we're moving away from linear learning, right? Where you sit button seat in classroom and learn. And then what I'll talk about later is this whole neurodiversity element of how brains function differently. Like that's the biggest risk I see with education is we don't give the opportunity for, you know, for me, I've stopped asking my kids questions like, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
is
not
this
a question. Right.
Is this getting into what you do now?
Yeah, but I think we
because
should.
I really truly don't know anything.
He doesn't know
Nothing.
anything. Right.
Nothing, but I'm like, non-linear.
yeah,
Like now
yeah.
I want to.
You're gonna love this. Okay,
Yeah.
are we
Okay.
halfway?
Yeah, we're halfway.
Okay,
Okay.
let's take a break and save that as a
Okay.
sweet little nugget.
Okay,
I
sounds
want
good.
For how this parlayed
Yes,
into this chapter, because there's so much that I think people can learn from your story. One is, how do you go from this to this, right?
Oh.
Because you're really
Top of the mountain.
You're on top of the mountain, and you can make mistakes that cost money, and it doesn't matter. But now everything you do has a huge impact on what you're doing, and also how are you doing in that, right?
Yeah,
so I'm
yeah.
excited about talking about that.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, let's take a break.
All right, Katie Jacobs.